Melissa, the Honeycomb Works is such an innovative company combining both kind of data and science. And I'd love to really understand the why behind why you started the company.
So our goal at the Honeycomb Works is for everyone at work to feel like they belong and are free to invent. We launched to improve organizational cultures so they had trust, innovation, and equity. And as we started digging into the research to figure out what actually creates cultures that have those three things, we found that if we sort out the inclusion part, the trust and the innovation are the natural outcomes of that. So if you create a culture where where a diverse group of people all feel like they belong, have psychological safety, are free to fail, to make mistakes, then you create amazing cultures where people want to work. And we spend an awful lot of time at work. So it is really important that we create cultures that don't cause people harm and are positive places to work, as well as then leading to businesses that do good for society, make great innovative products.
I love that. And what about your own personal driver behind the work that we do?
Yeah, it was 2016 when we started the Honeycomb Works, so nearly 5 years ago. And it was actually right after Brexit happened in the UK. And shortly thereafter, Trump got elected. So my background was working in large organizations, and I worked with teams that made me feel great, and I worked with teams that made me feel terrible. And I really wanted to figure out why that was. And as I mentioned previously, I came to the conclusion that inclusion was the most important factor, that feeling of belonging and safety. But then as those two global events hit, regardless of your politics, what we saw was a rise in hate crime, a normalization of white supremacist rhetoric. And that made me and the team that I founded, the Honeycomb Works, shift from, oh, isn't it great that we can all work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that we all care about, to, oh my goodness, we really have to be a part of fixing this, because it feels like whatever progress we've made, we're going to start slipping backwards. So we really wanted to do something where we can go and we could help people and do our bit for improving the world. There are lots of different ways to work for social justice, equity, and our expertise was in work. So it made sense for us to focus in this area.
I love that. And it really aligns with my own kind of why. And that's what I loved about the Honeycomb Works when I first got involved, was just because I had been coming from, an underrepresented background. I was always the only Black face in the room, or sometimes even the only young woman in the room. And I got so tired of seeing it. And I thought, right, I want to do more in that space and kind of create the bridge, because I felt like, one, our communities were disconnected, but also there's a disconnect between organizations, and understanding the impact that being in a space where no one looks like you has on the individual. And kind of got involved in 2018, just thinking about, right, how do I become more active, particularly within the Black community, as that's kind of where I identify. And then obviously with Black Lives Matter movement and seeing the huge transformation that happened there and the huge call out, it was like, okay, well, organizations are really trying to do something, but there weren't many organizations that were really able to get into, one, how do you become an inclusive organization, but also the science behind it, the behaviors that actually create that sustainable change. And that's what I loved about the Honeycomb Works, and kind of my passion for working here, really.
Yeah,
And
I
I'd love
think,
to know. Sorry, go on.
yeah, sorry, I was going to say some really important points there. I think what we've seen over the last 5-10 years of working on diversity, equity, and inclusion, there just hasn't been that much of a shift. There's still many organizations where you'd walk in and you would be the only Black woman in the organization. And I think that is part of also the driver for us, which is we were going to all these inclusion events and it was the same conversation over and over again. And we were looking at the numbers and they weren't shifting. So that's where we really started digging into the science and evidence of what is it that is really going to create these cultures, these positive, inclusive cultures, because as you said, the impact on someone within those cultures, organizations is significant. There's research that shows that there's health issues that arise when you are subject to bias and discrimination, conscious or unconscious, on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because doing this work, I feel like, is really difficult. I spend so much time focusing on actually how to help, other people have great experiences, and organizations kind of work through that really sticky, difficult, very kind of challenging, and abrasive almost kind of change. And I'd love to know, like, what's your North Star? What is the thing that keeps you going when things are difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I think a silly thing to say, but my privilege, I mean, when the thing that keeps me going is that, we've got a mission that means something, and and some of the stories that folks tell us in organizations, the bad stories that are that you just really, you hear them and you just really want to fix it. But then also the positive stories, the changes, the shifts, the moments where we have people coming and telling us that, they attended one of our events or one of our workshops, and they saw somebody they never thought would have the epiphany, say, I need to change my behavior. I need to start doing things differently. And I said my privilege is the first thing, because I think when I get sort of tired and exhausted, I think of how lucky I am to have the skin color that I have, the passports that I have, the security that I have. All of that is a good reason to say, get up the next morning and start the fight again.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I guess from the journey, I guess, that clients go on, what's sort of your favorite part of that process?
I think probably my favorite part is when they start to realize what sort of biases and assumptions they had on their part. So, I think you'd be hard pressed to find an organization or a human resources team these days who doesn't think that diversity, equity, inclusion is a good thing, that it's important. You'll see every once in a while somebody popping up and making those kinds of suggestions, but for the most part, people really truly believe that, know and understand that this is an important part of running any business and creating a culture. But I think what they don't realize is how many assumptions and biases they have. And I think probably one of my favorite parts is, and maybe this is a bit of a geeky thing to say, but it's where we go through all the data and bring people through it and share with them not just the facts and figures, so we can give them very specific insights into the behaviors that are happening in the organization, all anonymized, of course, but see where the issues and the challenges are. And then also when we do our qualitative research, sharing some of the stories, again, fully anonymized and protected for the individuals, but getting them to the point of understanding that we have a great places where they think they have a great culture, getting to that moment where they realize it's not a great culture for everyone, and then committing to that journey. So I think it's those moments of epiphany where that something's changed, something shifted in the organization, and because people in the positions of power understand what the problem is, it's specifically identified. And you made a good point about this before, right? Organizations don't know the specifics of what to do. They might know there's a problem. They might have anecdotes. They might even have engagement data or survey data saying that yes, people from certain demographic groups are having a worse experience than other people, but they still don't know what specifically is the problem. So being able to give them that specific pathway, I think is really exciting. So Lynn, what's your North Star? What keeps you going?
I think it's very similar to you. I think I always think about how lucky I am and the good things that I do have, like the fact that I'm able to I guess work in an industry where I can really create change for not just kind of people from all sorts of backgrounds, but it's for the me that would have been 10 years ago or 5 years ago, first joining an organization. And also just the fact that, I do live in the UK, like I've grown up relatively privileged in comparison to some people from where I come from. And also just the fact that I can use my voice and be instrumental. And I think whenever things are really, really difficult, I also just think at the end of the day, we're working towards a common goal. And if things take a bit longer or if they're more challenging, I think about what can I learn in that process. And I know a lot of people kind of adopt this saying of kind of everything is either a blessing or a lesson, but I really kind of do embody that and think about, right, okay, this might be challenging, this might be difficult, but that might mean that actually I'm a bit more resilient for the next difficulty that comes down the line. Or it's an opportunity for me to maybe even assess where I might have done things wrong or where I could have done things, a bit better to move forward. So that kind of keeps me going, just the passion for what I'm doing, and also just being grateful for the things that I do have that are great and going really well, and the privilege that I might have in different ways as well. So,
yeah, I love what you said about continuing to learn, because one of the things that we always try to tell people is this. There's a theory by a researcher called Dolly Chu, and what she recommends is that people don't try to be good, but try to be good-ish, because when we say we want to be good, it just feels like when we fail, it's devastating. But if we're always trying to be good-ish and see it as a constant improvement, then we're more likely to be able to get there, to improve, to act as an ally, to help people. And I think, you asked me about my favorite part of working with clients, and for us, it's very much about evolution, not revolution. It's, this isn't something that can be solved overnight. It's about continuous, incremental, pragmatic, but important improvement. So it's that just constant learning and getting better and also consistently working on it. There's not a point at which it's fixed. You always have people coming and people leaving and new pressures coming on. So it's something that needs to be consciously worked on and focused on all the time. Not to make it sound too difficult, because we make it a habit, so it becomes natural.
Melissa, and I know this is probably a bit difficult, but if you could summarize the Honeycomb Works in one sentence, how would you do that?
Well, when we looked at the reasons innovative cultures exist or don't exist, we believe it all comes down to behavior. It's the everyday habits of every person in an organization that makes a culture. So we work habit by habit, person by person. And the way that we scale that behavior change is through our Honeycomb application.
Fab. And the Honeycomb app, it kind of marries like science and research and technology. But could you share a little bit more about how that works?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the Honeycomb platform supports on behavior change and habit formation, and everything that is in the platform is based on the science of behavior change, cognitive psychology, and it starts with the fact that first, people don't really know what to do. If I told you to be more inclusive, or Lynn, I don't feel like you're making everybody feel safe. That's not true. You do all the time. You wouldn't know what to do. You wouldn't know what to do differently. So we go to academic research and we pull out what are the specific behaviors that a manager, a coworker, a colleague, a leader would be doing on a day-to-day basis that would create that inclusive culture. And they're very specific, because again, we know that the more specific the behavior, the habit you're trying to create is, the more likely you'll be able to put it into practice. So it might be something like spending an equal amount of time with my direct reports, because we know that there's academic research that says people from underrepresented groups don't get as much time with their managers, and that hurts their possibilities for promotion and advancement. So the first thing it is a framework, access to seeing what does good look like. So you can go into the Honeycomb and you can find the behaviors, the specific things that you can do. Now, the second thing that the Honeycomb platform does is help you become self-aware. So we know that we as human beings are terrible at really remembering the things that we do or understanding our impact on other people. So it's a 360 tool. You do your self-assessment, you think about how often you do those behaviors, and then you ask people around you to share with you how often they think you do those behaviors. And then you get your results, and you get a lovely honeycomb map colored in with your strengths and the areas that you can develop and improve. And it then helps you with putting those behaviors into practice. It has hints and tips and guides to how you can, the best ways to start using those habits. And then finally, it helps you measure progress. So once you feel like you've improved on something, you can ask people again and turn those areas of development into strengths, and keep moving along your honeycomb until you've created a brilliant culture. Now, for the organization, they get a lot of aggregated, anonymized data, but cut in a lot of different ways, so they can really figure out what are the areas of risks, what are the things that they really need to focus on, but then also what are the things they're doing really well, where are the areas that they shouldn't be changing things, they shouldn't be messing around with, because they're actually really quite strong in.
And I think one of the things I love about that is because we always talk about habits and how long it takes to kind of implement a habit. And I know that there's kind of varying opinions about this, but generally we normally hear it takes 30 days to embed a new habit. And I guess I'd want to know kind of why, with clients, the process might be six to 12 months. Kind of what's the reasoning behind that in terms of actually using the app and seeing change?
Sure. And it's actually beyond 6 to 12 months. It's lifetime, right? It's something that we have to work on constantly. And it might take us 30 days to create one set of habits or a couple of habits, but we're talking about continuously adding new and great habits. We also know that sometimes we revert if our environment changes or we become more stressed. I personally use the honeycomb because I felt like I wasn't creating as much space for innovation for my teams. And, as a former VP of innovation, that was quite upsetting to me, so I wanted to figure out why. And I used the honeycomb to pinpoint what are the specific behaviors that I need to work on to get that back. So the idea is that it's just a constant process of improving and personal development. And, we want people to be thinking about, how do I be a better colleague, coworker? And that should be part of your job, because so much of what we do at work is interacting with other people. So the idea is that you should be working on your personal development on an ongoing basis. And maybe it's not constantly every single day, every single working day, but you want to come back to it frequently, and it wants to be there for you as a resource when you do.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you gained some insight into the Honeycomb Works. If you're interested in sparking change within your organisation, please reach out to us on LinkedIn or via our website. Remember to like, comment and share, and don't forget to subscribe.